This is the tutorial you need. How do I know? Because we are treating fabric placement. And you know that for the past couple of years, it has come to gain popularity. Hi, my name is Kemi. You're welcome to Kemafric. I'm your tutor for today. Sit back and let's learn together. Let me start with the definition of fabric placement. According to we, the Nigerian fashion designers, as the authority that we are, we have decided that fabric placement means placing your fabric on a base. So let me just call it lace fabric placement here. It just simply means revamping your lace and placing it on an already established base. It can be done on a bodice. You can do it on maybe a corset base on the bodice. And you can also do this on the skirt. This is what we are working with. So a round of applause for our model for today. What should we name her? Give me suggestions in the comment section. You don't need fabric placement all the time, but you can make use of fabric placement when you are working with a heavily beaded lace, and it may be easier for you to hand stitch than for you to sew on your sewing machine. Of course, this is not necessary for ready to wear pieces because you can't work with it, but for bespoke tailoring, custom made wears, you need to ensure that your client is able to come in for fitting. So you can do your fabric placement on the client right there, or you can do it on a dress form that has similar size with your client. So let's just say it's an escape route for sewing beaded lace with the sewing machine. So you can easily, sew the base of your outfit, place the lace on it, and then hand stitch. It is actually as simple as that. So sometimes the fabric you are placing is just straight cut, just the same size with your base, and you just want to place it and sew. And some other times you are actually trying to drape. When you have those traditional wedding ashwebi, and then you have your lace draped on a base. That established, let's zoom in to focus on the skirt. What do you use in sewing your base before you start fabric placement? I highly recommend crepe, especially a thick crepe. If your crepe is thick, you may not need lining so that you don't have to be stitching 2 layers of fabric. But if you're working with a light crepe, you can still make use of the same fabric as the lining, okay? And also, if you're going to be adding hip padding, then you can't escape the use of lining. But this is not limited to crepe. Anything you are used to, maybe if you use doll face satin, you can still do it on it. There's no police coming to hold you. So any fabric that you usually use to sew your lace normally, that you use as interlining and lining for your laces, can work when you are doing fabric placement. But if you don't like hand stitching, this is not for you. So you can go ahead and still cut your lace the way you usually do, break the stones or pick out all the stones, then you go ahead and sew on your sewing machine. But if you don't mind some hand stitching, then this will work for you. I know I'm saying a lot, but it is just necessary to establish some of these things before we go ahead to doing the work, so that you understand The goal is that after you watch this video, you don't have any problem with fabric placement. Now, I want you to note something. When you cut your base, like when you cut your crepe, your doll face satin, or whatever you are using for the base, you use that base material, that crepe, place it on a lace and cut it out with the same seam allowance, or you may want to increase the seam allowance by ½ an inch, but you can work with the same seam allowance. Just place your base on your lace and cut it out. That means when you are transferring your pattern to your crepe, you're using that same pattern to cut out the lace. Then you go ahead and sew the base just the way you sew your skirt regularly. I have a tutorial for this on the channel, so you may want to check it out. Okay, so I'm going to bring you closer so that you can see what I'm doing on this. In this case, what we are making is a dress, and I already have my corset here. Then I have this mermaid skirt with hip padding included. For this, because of the hip padding as well, and also the texture of the fabric I'm using, I have a lining underneath. Now, when you're making your base, you finish up the hemline, whatever way you intend to finish it. But for this skirt, I'm making use of a crinoline. So I'm going to attach my crinoline to the hem of this skirt, okay, without the lace for now. Then let me turn this around to the back. At the back here, I'm going to cut out my zipper, rip ½ an inch of the side seam, then back stitch so that it doesn't continue ripping. Then I'll go ahead and close up the back. That is because I'm making use of a straight back. Sometimes when you see dresses like this, you can have your back styled into another design. Okay, you can have a curvy back, so you may not have to do this. But because my back is going to be straight, I want to remove ½ an inch from both the lining and the fabric. I'll cut out my zipper, and then I'll close up the waistline for my skirt. What it means is that we have half an inch allowance at the front side of the skirt. So let me go ahead. I will pull this out of the dress form. I'll go ahead and do that before we come and work on the front waistline. So I'm going to turn the right side of the lining to face the right side of the fabric, and I'll go ahead and stitch only the back by half an inch, making sure I end, I ripped open half an inch along the side seam, right? So we're only dealing with the back lining and the back fabric. Okay, we are attaching the two together to waistline. So I'm sewing the two together to close up the waistline. So this is the right side of my back waistline. I hope you can see it clearly. This is the zipper right here, and this is what we have. So I'll do the same thing to the other side. Now that I'm done sewing close the back waistline, both the right and the left, next I'm going ahead to give this a good press to make it lay flat. While sewing close this waistline, you can actually sew along hemming gum so that you can press this flat. Now this is the hem of my skirt. This is the right side of my fabric. I'm making use of this 2 inches wide crinoline. You can actually make use of any method of finishing that you want to use. You can just hem this by half an inch maybe, but I want to make use of crinoline in this case. So let me go ahead with that. I'm placing my crinoline on my fabric, right side of my fabric, and I'll go ahead and stitch by 1/4 of an inch or half an inch as you wish. I'll go through the entire width of the hemline. The outfit is back on the dress form. I have closed up the back waistline and we have our hem properly done. So this is what hemline looks like. Let's move on to the waistline. I asked you to loosen half an inch so that you can then use the half inch to close up the back waistline. Then you leave the front waistline bare. Let's move on to the back. So this is our zipper now being closed up, and here has been sewn inward. Now I'll be moving on to reshape my front waistline. So at this stage, there are a couple of things you should note. Number one is that you should notch the center front of your skirt and place it right at the center of the corset or any outfit you are placing this on. But for me, I'm going ahead to make sure it is well aligned. Also, check the side seam of your corset and make sure it aligns with the side seam of your skirt. But even if you have some excesses on your skirt, make sure that it is symmetrical. That if you have like extra 1 inch on your left, have the same extra 1 inch on the right as well. So for this, we are very, very good to go. This is just exactly the waistline I used for the corset. No problem with alignment. The next thing you want to take note of is your front half length or front length. Place your tape at the nape of your neck here and go ahead and measure. If you watch my last pattern when we're drafting this skirt pattern, you notice that I came downward by 1 inch at the center front of the skirt, right? Put that into consideration as well when you are measuring your front waistline. Now, if you're doing this fabric placement on your client, it will be obvious if your skirt is on your client's waistline, so you may not even have to measure. Just place it where you love the most, where everything sits into the body properly, the hip aligns properly, and then the tiniest part of the waist right here. So because I'm doing this on dress form, that's why I need to take this measurement. So I have 18 inches here, then I have like extra half an inch because I reshaped my skirt by 1 inch inward. So this is just okay. So I'm going to take the same measurement on this side. I just want to make sure that my skirt is well placed. Okay, I have 18.5 just like I had here. So that means this placement is perfect, right? You can also measure the side seam, between the side seam and your skirt waistline here, and do the same thing. I have 8 inches. I'll do the same thing on this other side seam. Okay, I have 8 inches here. So we are good to go. I will go ahead and shape this skirt. So I'm going to bring you guys forward so that you see this closely. You must have decided on the type of waistline you want. If you don't want any dramatic waistline, then you can just go ahead and start stitching. But in this case, I think I'll make use of a basque waistline, about 4 or 5 inches downward. So because I have half an inch seam allowance here, I'm going to mark 5 inches. So basically that means 4.5 inches downward if I'm excluding the seam allowance. So right here, I can feel this center bone here, so this is going to guide me. Okay, you know what, let me make it 4 inches. So I'm marking 4.5 inches instead of the 5 inches here, so I can feel the center bone here. This may be easier to work with. I'm going to use my pen to mark out. If you have a fabric pen, that should come in handy in this case, to mark out the direction I'll be cutting this. I'll come this way and do the same thing. Okay, so if you're not very sure of your tip, I'm going to measure the bone from the base of my corset to this part here. Okay, so here I have 6 inches, then I should have the same 6 inches here. On this part I have, okay, the position of my curve is 4 inches below from the top. So here I still have 4 inches. On the side bone in here is 2 inches away. I should have the same 2 inches. Okay, in this case I can see that this side is slightly deeper, so from here to here is 2 inches. So I'm going to redraw my shape. So this is just to help you so that your cut is symmetrical. You don't battle with symmetry. So now I can go ahead to pin down my skirt so that it doesn't come off before cutting. I'm making use of a basque waistline because I know that is what we are mostly familiar with. Okay, most of us are used to basque waistline. Most of the corset styles we make use of basque waistline. I want my lining to align properly with the fashion fabric. So I'm going to cut all the way here. Guys, you need to be careful. This is where I marked, and then I went ahead to draw my line somewhere else. This is where I marked. Okay, not here. We are making use of here. I don't know if you're seeing this properly. I just hope so. You are going to cut the center front, then stop ½ inch above your marking. Okay, and then when you're cutting the sides, you add ½ inch or even 1 inch seam allowance. I'm using this center bone to guide me. My scissors is basically on the bone right now. Ensure that you don't cut your corset open. So I have ½ inch here. I'm just going to fold this inward. I'm folding in on the line on our marking. Exactly the point I marked is where I'm folding in right now. I just hope that this solves every problem you have with fabric placement, because I see a lot of reels on social media on this. People just doing it as if they are doing magic, you know, before and after. From now going forward, you'll be able to do your fabric placement very easily because you understand the rules, you understand the guidelines. Now I'm just extending my fold to the actual point I marked. Okay, so we have our waistline like so. If you have a steam iron, go ahead and steam press on this fold so that it stays in place and stays very, very neatly before you go ahead to stitch. This is the lace fabric I will use. The pattern I used in cutting this is the same pattern I used for this base. So what I did was to just place this base before sewing on this fabric, and then I cut it out. So they have the same seam allowance, and that just helps make my work easier. So you see, for laces like this, you have 2 options of either breaking and then sewing on your sewing machine, or doing fabric placement and hand stitching. Another way you can place your lace on your base is to sew it on the sewing machine. That's break your stones, pick out your stones, and go ahead and join the sides together. So when you have placed this on the dress form like this, what you do is to just wear the skirt on this one, then you do your hand stitching on the waistline. This is the side and this is the center back. So I will make use of my pins here. I'm going to be pinning this on my skirt. You need a lot of pins. Remember, there is 1 inch zipper allowance, so along the zipper allowance I'm just going to have my 1 inch, and then above the waistline I'm going to have my 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now along this zipper line I'm just going to fold in my 1 inch seam allowance like so. Okay, remember I said we have 1 inch zipper allowance, right? So I'm going to fold it in on the side of the zip like so. So that's how you treat the center back. You fold in your zipper allowance. Okay, once you are through with this zip region, you can place like a 1 inch notch or 1/2 inch notch depending on the zipper allowance you're working with, and just continue with your fabric without folding. Okay, don't worry about folding it in again. We are folded up to this point, so now I'm just placing it without folding. So let's move on to this side. You want to make sure that your base is flat. Okay, you're not having any folds. I just have 1/2 inch seam allowance, so that's what I'm working with. You continue all the way down. So just a case of choose your hard. You may say, this one is hard though, or sewing beaded lace is hard on the sewing machine. So you just choose your own hard actually. So I'm just going to continue all the way down, bring out my tail. Place this tail. I have a little notch here for my tail. Place the notch where I have my tail, and continue pinning. Okay, so we have this properly placed. When treating the zipper region, ensure that your beads, in fact your lace fabric, is slightly away from the zipper line so that it doesn't obstruct the zip. Just give a very tiny allowance because your zipper needs to move. So I'm done with this center back here. So I'm just going ahead. First I'm starting at the nail, then I'll pin upward and backward as well. Okay, so I think we are good to go on this side. I have this side placed like so. You can go ahead and also hold here down. If your lace has a neat edge like this one has a neat edge, it's not ripping easily. Okay, so I can leave it on the edge of my crinoline like this, or you can take it and fold it a little bit inward, like maybe 1 inch or 1/2 inch, whatever allowance you have right there, then tack it. So you can fold it in and then tack it from inside in a way that it won't show on the right side. So I have this side well draped, just the way I did this. I will go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So this is what we have up close. This is the zipper allowance. Okay, note how I folded in some 1 inch, my zipper allowance. I folded it in here. So this is where I'm going to stitch at the end of the day. Meanwhile, for the rest of the back, this is what I was telling you guys about cutting, notching at the base to release this fabric. Here is folded, here is not folded. So here I just placed it on what I had on this side. Okay, so there's no need to do folding here. Just look at it. Can you tell? No, you cannot tell. So you have an option of stitching the center like this and cutting off the seam allowance, or you fold it in like this and stitch it down. So those are the two options at the center back. This is the side seam allowance here, and this is the raw edge of my lace. Now I'm going to place the front lace at the front, using it to close up this side. Before we continue, I trust you are getting some values from this video. Please hit the subscribe button if you are not yet subscribed. Like these videos so that YouTube can suggest it to other people, and also drop a comment in the comment section. Thank you very much. So please ignore this lace. This is outside the scope of this tutorial. What was happening was I was trying to decide whether to cut off this lace or not. So you may want to consider the design and the type of styling you intend to do on the bodies before you cut off this upper lace part, because this is a good way to hide your seam. Okay, let me go into hiding of seam. Let's say, for example, you are cutting this off. Okay, you don't want this your basque waistline to be very obvious. If you are good at beading, or you are employing a beader to bead the outfit for you, you can use bead to conceal the seam line here after stitching, after hand stitching. Or you can make use of patches of lace that you may have. For instance, this one has clusters of sequins and beads that I will cut off as part of my design later on. So you can use it to conceal it, lace patches. Also, we have trimmings that are being sold in the market. You may want to buy a design or two or even more and, you know, creatively arrange it around here to close it up. If you are going to drape the lace on the body, you may want to make use of the neat edge of the lace to close up this part. So yeah, I was just playing around with this. Let me pull it out so we can continue the tutorial. So because I'm going to be draping my lace on it, I'm not going to cut out the basque part of this waistline. I'm going to instead just cut off the net in between my lace. You can use zigzag, not zigzag, but you can follow the pattern of your lace just to give this part a very neat finishing in a way that even when you're looking at it, you won't suspect. Okay, I don't want to do it right now. What it means for me is that I'm not sewing the upper part of this lace to the waistline, okay, because we are not done with it. I'm just going to, you know, leave it out of my seam. Okay, we'll get back to it. On the other hand, if your plan is to bead on this, what you're going to do is, you know, trim this lace, shape the bust waistline of the lace, then go ahead and fold the allowance, the ½ inch allowance inside the way you folded this base. That's the same way you're going to treat the lace, and then you can go ahead and stitch. But like I said, that's not what I'm doing in this case, so I'm leaving the lace out for now. Let us treat this. So let's talk about stitching. For stitching, you can make use of these invisible threads. I think they come in different colors, but what I have here is black and white. And for your needle, you can make use of your regular needle, but it may be more challenging, especially for the sides of the skirt. This is the small size of curved needle. It comes in, the set I bought comes in 4 sizes. This can help make stitching on your dress form easier. So you may want to get one of these. So for clarity, I'm not sure I mentioned, but this can come in handy when you are stitching on laces. But if you are sewing your skirt on corset, just make use of the color of thread that your base comes in. That way your thread won't be obvious. I'm making use of my curved needle. I've also doubled my thread here. So I'm going to start from this side, and we are going to make use of ladder stitch. So what ladder stitch is I'll take part of the net, then go in with a part of the crepe, and so on and so forth, and then we'll continue and pull it. You can go from center to this side, then from the center to the other side again. So now I have started my seam on the inside so that that part doesn't show. Then I'll be picking. Okay, I'll pick a part of the net or part of the tulle, then pick another part from my crepe. Okay. Don't worry about dragging it just yet. When you are through, you can then pull your thread. So are you seeing? Are you following? I just hope this is clear enough. Let me bring you closer. There may be other method of stitching, but this works perfectly fine for me. This stitch is also used whenever you are hiding all your seam lines. So here I'm just going to pull my thread to close up all what I've done so far. Okay, so this is what I have here. You can see it is fully hidden, right? So I'm just going to continue till I get to the center back. So ensure that the distance between here and here aligns with what you have on the other side. I finished this up just before the lacing bar here, so right here. So you can trim this off, or you continue your stitch, okay, to just lock it in till you get to the end here. Don't sew on the lacing bar though, just the lace and your base fabric here.